Okay, so today we are going to look at your first AP essay together. Okay, what we'll be doing over the next few weeks is looking at different types of essays you might see on the AP exam. I don't want you to think that this is something beyond your capability. You've been doing small portions of this each week with your constructed responses with Miss Smith. This is just a longer constructed response. Today I want to go through the essay together with you. I want to read it aloud. I want to model some thinking activities that you should do while you're reading the essays. I know it won't be very exciting for you, but I do need for you to see how this thought process works. Okay? So, and as I do the reading and thinking, I'm going to try to annotate using some tools. So hopefully it will help you make things be a little clearer. Okay, so question 2. Mary Ann Shadd Cary was an African-American writer, newspaper publisher, educator, lawyer, and abolitionist. In 1851, she went from the United States to Canada to work with the fugitive community, the escaped slaves, and the freed slaves who crossed the border into Canada after the United States Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act. She soon began publishing the newspaper Provincial Freeman to link the fugitives and to promote the anti-slavery cause. The passage below is from an editorial, Why Establish This Paper, that appeared in the second issue of the Provincial Freeman, March 25, 1854. Read the passage carefully, considering the circumstances in which it was written. Then, in a carefully written essay, analyze the techniques Mary Ann Shadd Cary uses to establish the necessity of her newspaper. Now, I will tell you, the first problem I find students have when they're doing these AP essays is that they neglect reading all of this information. Okay, and this is all important information. It tells you, gives you some context for the piece that you're getting ready to read, and it also gives you specifically what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, so as we read, this is our goal here. We are going to analyze the techniques she uses to establish the necessity of her newspaper. Now, anytime in the AP essay you see this term techniques, you are thinking about diction, syntax, structure, logos, pathos, ethos, anything that the author does to make their purpose clear. Okay? So, let's get started. And I'm going to kind of take this paragraph by paragraph. All right. We need an organ, too, for making our voice heard at home. Some of our wants, grievances, and demands are peculiar to ourselves. It is so with other classes. We form a considerable element in the political constitution of our country, one way and another. As the great country grows, we grow with it. As it improves and progresses, we are carried forward on the bosom of its onward tide. Questions will arise affecting us as a class, which we must know how skillfully and efficiently to meet. To be always at the mercy of the demagogue of the hour is neither safe, dutiful, nor in any sense becoming. We must allow our fellow subjects to know who we are and what we want through our own authorized mouthpiece. Hence, we must have a mouthpiece. Is that not plain? Okay, so the first thing that I'm noticing here, I see this word organ, and I like that word. I like the idea of her saying that they need to be a part of the body, okay? And then the next question is, what part of the body do they want to be a part of? So she says, we form a considerable element. And when she uses the word we, I go back up to my context and I know that she is talking about the escaped slaves, okay? The fugitive community, all right? We form a considerable element in the political constitution of our country, one way or another. Now, this is kind of where I get confused. She's using this phrase, our country, and at one point she talks about, right here, she says, We need an organ for making our voice heard at home. Well, the home for these people was the United States, but they are now in Canada. And so I'm not sure if when she says our country, she's talking about the United States or if she's talking about Canada. We're going to need to figure that out, okay? Another thing that I'm drawn to in this paragraph is how she talks about how here, as the great country grows, we grow with it. As it improvises and progresses, we are carried forward on the bosom of its onward tide. I like that connection she's making there. Okay, and now I'll go back up to my purpose. I'm going to analyze the techniques she uses to establish the necessity of her newspaper. So she's making a connection here between this group of people, all right, the fugitive community, and the progress of the country. She also gives us at the bottom of this paragraph a rhetorical question. Is that not plain? Well, what is she talking about? What's the question supposed to answer? What's plain? Well, the fact that the fugitive community is a part of the country, and the fugitive community needs a mouthpiece. They need to get their message out. All right? So let's go to our next paragraph. Besides, it is due to our Constitution and government that we should train ourselves so as to fit us for the discharge of the duties of free men in full. Such free men we never were before, and hence the need of our being fitted as well to look after our rights and interests as to discharge our duties. We beg to ask especial attention to those 2 points. They are, to our own mind, matters of importance. Indeed, upon our first arrival in Canada, they struck us forcibly, and every day their importance to us has increased. Now, when we're thinking about diction and we're thinking about word choice, I like this idea of the word organ. I like this idea of she's talking about home. Seems to be making a definite distinction between the United States as their home and Canada as the place where they're hanging out for now. I also like that she's using this word free men. I can imagine the power that word would have for people in the fugitive community. I mean, these were escaped slaves, they were freed slaves, they knew slavery. And if we're looking at our date of publication, March of 1854. So this is pre-Civil War, okay? Such free men we never were before, and hence the need of our being fitted as well to look after our rights and interests as to discharge our duties. So she's putting responsibility. She's not just saying, hey, we're free, we can do what we want. She's saying we're free and we have rights and duties. Okay? Now, the question is does this use of the term free men and this idea of rights and interests as to discharge our duties, does that help establish the necessity of the newspaper? And I think maybe it does, because I think in what she's saying here is that free men know what their rights are and they know what their duties are. This newspaper is designed to help these free men, the people in the fugitive community, know what their rights and duties are. We say it in no ill spirit, but whatever blame may be cast upon us for saying it, it is neither to be denied nor concealed that there is not and never was a newspaper in Canada which represented the intelligence of colored Canadians. Never one whose respectability made it such a paper, as in a free country we need not be ashamed of. We do not ask the friends of the paper, nor the publishing committee, nor the stockholders to be responsible for this remark. We say it on our own responsibility, and if anybody chooses to find fault with it, let him write to us, and he shall have his say in our columns. But we venture to say that our statement is simply true. We beg to add that none of the papers published by our people in the States answer that purpose. Okay, so I need to stop here because in this paragraph, she says that in Canada, there's never been a newspaper that represented the intelligence of colored Canadians. She said it's just a fact. And then in this paragraph, she begins to say that not only has a newspaper like the one that she has created here, the Provincial Freeman, not only has it never existed in Canada, it's never existed in the States. And again, I come back to this idea of home. We talked about that over here. Okay, looking at home. Here she says, by our people in the States. So I'm thinking that when she's talking about our country and home, she's talking about the United States. Okay, even though they're in Canada now. They either pass us by in cold contempt, ignore us altogether, keep themselves or their readers, or both, ignorant of what Canada is, or in some other way, by opposition or neglect disparaging us as much as convenient. They will do us but very little good. And here when she's saying they, she's talking about all the newspapers that have said that they do support the free man. They support the fugitive slave. She said they don't, and they keep people ignorant. We recollect a paper of small size, published and edited by Mr. What do you call him? Called the Impartial Citizen, wherein there never was one column of information concerning Canada. And one of the reasons was the editor knew next to nothing about Canada. We fear that other editors in the States will be of as little service to us as that gentleman then was. Good friends, we have a paper because we think we need one, and we have told you some reasons why. Do you agree with us? Now, this idea of setting up an example, okay, she says, there's never been a paper that does what needs to be done for the fugitive slave, okay, or the fugitive community, excuse me, the fugitive community, the escaped slaves and the freed slaves who have moved into Canada. She said there was a paper, but it was useless. And it was useless because they never provided any information concerning Canada. Well, why would information concerning Canada be important? Well, I think that's pretty simple. In 1854, that was one of the safe havens for freed men and fugitive slaves. Okay. Now, if we're thinking about rhetorical questions, over here it says, is that not plain? We also see a rhetorical question at the end. She says, do you agree with us? Well, rhetorical questions don't require answers. So, in this case, do you agree with us? What's the natural answer that you should have? Of course you have to agree with her. Any intelligent person could not disagree with her. Okay, so here's your assignment. You're going to write me 2 paragraphs following the statement note commentary structure that I've laid out on your Google Doc, okay? And you are going to analyze 2 components of this text. Now, when I'm talking about the text, I'm talking about this information here, okay? I'm not talking about the context that we were given up here. You can reference the context, but all of your textual evidence needs to come from the actual text of the piece, okay? So you're going to analyze 2 pieces of textual evidence that explain the techniques she used to establish the necessity of her newspaper. All right, let's see what you can do.